Welcome back to my 2022 NFL Exit Report series. This is the third of my 32 team ambitious adventure to go ahead and look back at all 32 teams we've previously done in the AFC South, Indianapolis, and Tennessee. And today we're going to do the Houston Texans. Again, the purpose of this is not only to share my process and my thoughts as to how I handicap each team, but also what are some of the key indicators that I look at before the season, and just a look back personally to help me along and hopefully to help the viewers along as to how the season played out and what I might be looking for 2023. So as we go back and we discuss Houston, this is probably one of my favorite teams to discuss because it was in my top 5 season win total bets. As usual, those who know me know that I tend to play more unders than overs, and this was a live one to me. You're talking about a 2021 Houston Texan team that settled for David Culley as their head coach, pretty much an unknown guy, and he was tasked with the impossible task of going out and taking a group of individuals, the Houston Texans, with no known quarterback, with Deshaun Watson suspended, 40 new players based on free agency and the draft. It was literally a meet and greet. There was no way that they were going to have chemistry. And this first year, raw coach was somehow going to put it all together, and it didn't work. In 2021, they were dead last against the run. They rushed Davis Mills, a 4th-round draft pick, into action. He did pretty good, actually, 16-10 touchdown to interception ratio. But that pass defense was near 70% for most of the year. They allowed 30 touchdown passes. They only had 3 defensive interceptions. So they had a lot of work to do coming in to 2022. Now, here's a problem I have right away. First of all, the draft classes of 2019 and 2020 and 2021, especially the previous 2 years, were rated 32nd and 31st, dead last and next to last by me in my 40th and 41st ever NFL draft analysis. So that was a problem. They weren't a great drafting team. Free agents didn't really want to come there. And then they made the curious hire. It was they were looking at Josh McCown. They were looking at a number of people, I believe, to be their head coach. And they settled on Lovie Smith. Not only did Lovie Smith become their head coach, but he also became their defensive coordinator at the same time, carrying 2 jobs, hard enough to carry 1 job. And Lovie Smith, unfortunately, my assessment of Lovie Smith is that he was back in the John Fox, Jeff Fisher dinosaur days. It's kind of like the movie quote, adapt or die. Lovie Smith was not adapting. He was let go by Chicago. He signed on with the University of Illinois, and that team went south instead of north. And after he left, Illinois got better. So right away, there were a number of strikes against Lovie Smith and Houston producing in 2022. This particular draft wasn't bad. It was middle of the pack, which is really good for them. It produced 3 defensive starters. One, Stingley, the 3rd overall pick, maybe a little overdrafted, primarily because he can't stay on the field long enough. But there were 2 other very impactful starters for the year. There was also tape on Mills, the quarterback, so it was going to be tougher for him to replicate that particular performance. So let's go over some of my keys for 2022 entering the season. And let me start by saying we were going to have another 30 new faces on this team. Lovie Smith was remaking the roster. They signed a lot of free agents. So that's a lot of bodies that have passed through this organization in a short period of time. That, again, was going to be a chemistry issue. As you can see on the scroll, my first key was this. Would they do enough entering 2022 to defend the run? Dead last, as I mentioned, against the run in 2021. The draft did not address this area sufficiently enough. I did not think they would do enough to defend the run. My concern wearing 2 hats was one of my keys that I put on my individual team sheets. Could he be both the defensive coordinator and the head coach at the same time? Lovie Smith comes from a defensive background to begin with. This is an offensive-minded league. This worried me as well. What I saw in August, and I actually used to write a column in my seasonal previews called, "Did the preseason mean anything?" And typically 5 years ago, I would get a number of fantastic nuggets out of the preseason. But now half the teams don't even start any of the guys that are going to be impactful during 2022. They treat the preseason like a plague. New coaches, however, you can get some nuggets. And what I did see out of Lovie Smith's team in August is an emphasis on pass rush. They had 14 August sacks in just 3 game preseason schedule now. So I was wondering how that would translate and whether or not maybe that was something that I could pick up and say, hey, maybe there's one area that they're better than I thought. So I was going to check that out. And my final key it says key number 4. But overall, it's just basically a Lovie Smith concern. So let me move on. Here's key number 4, the turnover ratio. A lot of teams can pick up free points. If you have a -10 turnover ratio, 3.5 points per turnover, that's 35 points you can pick up by just being flat. Don't turn the ball over. The problem for Houston entering 2022 is they had a +3 turnover ratio. They were not going to pick up free points. They were going to have a young defense with all these rookies. They were going to have a raw quarterback. The offensive line was suspect. They didn't have a lot of height nor a lot of depth at wide receiver or tight end. I could not predict that they would get any points out of turnovers and they might actually spike down. So that was another concern for me. So now we go into what my season win decisions were, and this was an easy one. Based on everything, including their point ratio from the previous year, the fact that Lovie Smith, to me, is a below-average coach in an offensive-minded league with all the new bodies and faces and concern at quarterback. The line opened 5.5 briefly, then went to 5, where all of my money was on the under 5 season win total. This, again, was a top 5 play for all the reasons and concerns that I have mentioned. So let's see how the season played out. And surprisingly, you might say, the season played out differently than what I thought at the beginning of the year. The sacks were up. And if not for Lovie Smith, this team had a chance to be at least 3-3 after 6 games. And I feel lucky that they had one win in their first 4 games, first 5 games, 1-3-1. They started 0-3-1. They should have beaten Indianapolis week 1. That game ended in a tie, a crazy tie, if you remember, both teams pretty much deciding that they wouldn't go for the win, but they were going more for the tie. They let a game slip away against Chicago, who was rebuilding in their own right. So I felt pretty lucky that things didn't go according to plan for Houston, that they started off so slow because they had winnable chances early. Their stat sheet actually showed them as closer to a 5-win team. But again, I think Lovie Smith made some critical decisions that cost them games in the fourth quarter. He didn't make adjustments at halftime. Basically, during the year, I didn't take as much advantage of this because they were playing close. They covered the spread an acceptable number of times. My actual in-season performance was less than 50% in betting their games during the season, but I was proud to have easily won the season win total. At the end of the year, I thought Houston was a team where they still need a quarterback. Davis Mills did as best as he could with what he was to be working with. But there were lots of holes. There were lots of coaching decisions that bothered me. And in the end, Lovie Smith was let go, and we understand why. So looking at my notes here, where are we now? I could say this: their run defense did not improve. They allowed 5.1 per carry and an astronomical 170 yards on the ground per game. I say it's astronomical, but because prior to 3 years ago, now there's a lot of running quarterbacks and it skews the numbers. But prior to 2019, the average amount of yards that were allowed on per game running was around 110 to 117 each and every year. It spiked up a little. It's in the 120s, low 120s. So 170 is completely statistically significant. It is a horrible number, and Houston has a lot of work to do to improve their defense against the run. They hired D'Amico Ryans yesterday. I'm taping this on February 1st, so they hired him yesterday. And while in some ways it's a funny hire because this is an offensive-minded league, and you try to get the Sean Paytons, you try to get these offensive-minded coaches like Doug Peterson and so on. But make no mistake, D'Amico Ryans is a huge upgrade for this team, especially concerned with what they have. And D'Amico Ryans is coming home. He played in Houston. He's beloved in Houston. And everybody says, well, he worked with San Francisco. He had a top 5 defensive unit, but he helped make that a top 5 defensive unit. It's not a fantastic secondary. If you get past Boza, they do it on effort with the pass rush and so on. Give D'Amico Ryans credit for building that San Francisco defense. And he's going to bring that mentality, and he's going to bring a good attitude where free agents may want to come to Houston and play for him. Now, the key moving forward would be hire a great offensive coordinator. Let D'Amico cede all that power offensively to somebody who's had some coordinating experience and can design some creative game plans. And they do have a nice draft bounty. Remember, they traded Deshaun Watson. They got a whole boatload of picks. They have 5 picks in the upcoming draft in the top 73. Now, I am concerned about this draft team. They have a history of not doing well, but if all goes well, they're going to add a ton of talent to the roster that needs a ton of talent. They can develop some of the young talent that they've had. They need a new quarterback. They still need to solidify the offensive line. They need to get taller and deeper at wide receiver. Maybe add a tight end to the mix. There's a lot of things that they still need. But I think we'll find Houston on the upswing. I'm not ready to make any momentous decisions to saying that they're going to be an over team. Look for them to make a Jacksonville type leap next year. I'm not ready to say that. I need to see what the draft has in store for them. But I think if they can do something in free agency, entice free agents to come play for D'Amico Ryans, get off the field a little faster by stopping the run, and then developing a quarterback on a rookie contract, then the future will be bright considering all the draft choices they have coming up. That's my review and preview of the Houston Texans. Of course, I'll have more to say about them come draft time when I produce draft reports. I'll be writing some articles. You'll see me on other videos and podcasts. So hopefully you'll subscribe to my page, which will be growing. Up next, we're going to deviate away from the AFC South and go to the AFC East, talk about Buffalo and then the Jets after that. Thank you for watching my preview and my exit report for the NFL, and we'll see you down the road.